But first, at the going down of the sun, we will remember them, so goes the ode. Easier said than done, of course, and the sun has set on yet another Anzac Day and there's much to ponder. The government this week finally announced a Royal Commission into ADF and Veteran suicides. Let's hope it's not just another protracted exercise that publishes voluminous findings, takes years, only to gather dust on a ministerial shelf. The rate of suicide among serving ADF members and veterans is simply horrifying. For every soldier killed in action since our deployment to Afghanistan in October 2001, 10 have taken their own lives in Australia. I now work almost exclusively in the area of veteran support since completing my own service on the 47th anniversary of my enlistment on 14 January 1974. I commanded and was commanded by men who served in Korea, Malaya, Borneo and Vietnam. In turn, I was privileged to lead young Australians overseas who weren't even born when those wars were fought. So a few observations that I hope are helpful and taken in that spirit, because tonight is neither a night for cheap politics nor culture war posturing. But the system of veterans' entitlements is simply too complex and frankly, I think it warrants the description broken. There are a multiplicity of acts defining veterans' benefits, and that which affects most of those who served in our longest war in Afghanistan is miserly in its provisions and administered by a department that is either dysfunctional or seems to be simply overwhelmed. Delays in processing claims are simply too long, unacceptably so. And the ADF is discharging people who are manifestly broken, either psychologically or physically, and exhibiting either suicidal ideation or have no employment plans and options on discharge. And there are simply too many ex-service organisations trying to provide niche assistance across this domain. It's inefficient, with many wasting money that should be providing direct support to veterans. In my view, the Commonwealth needs to legislate to cover the field by passing express legislation consolidating the scheme of all repatriation benefits for all living veterans. The current system's frankly a mess. I think Darren Chester, the current minister, actually does understand this. All my dealings with him have impressed me. He's got great mastery of detail and he's deeply committed to veterans. But only a whole of government approach to this issue will make it work. He needs the support of the PM, the Attorney General and the Minister for Defence. And on the other end of the equation, the RSL simply has to recover its status as a truly national voice for veterans and rid itself once and for all of the grifters and time servers who have tarnished its reputation, especially amongst the veterans of our recent conflicts. Our longest war is drawing to a close, but for many who served in it, their greatest struggles lie ahead. Those permanently damaged in mind and body don't get a one day of the year opportunity to mouth pieties. We owe them better. Well, Liz, over to you. Have you got any thoughts on the Veterans Royal Commission and Anzac Day reflections generally?
Well, firstly, it's definitely long overdue in regards to the Royal Commission, and I don't think any Aussie who's across the issue would disagree with that. Certainly today was a wonderful day. I would consider it the most important day on the Australian calendar, Catherine. But something that really stood out to me as I was looking at my social media today, and Aussies I know across our nation posting in honour of those who have served, fought and died for the freedoms that we enjoy today, is that we now have an Australian public. That means our governments, and I do mean plural, both state and federal, have their work cut out for them to convince us that they do indeed value our troops and our military, whether it's the Brereton report, whether it's veteran suicides, whether it's the limitations the states put on place when they're allowing tens of thousands of people to gather in different stadiums for different reasons, and yet the limitations put on place on our Anzac Day services across the nation. We now have an Australian public who are awake to and remarkably angry about, as they, I believe, rightly should be, the fact that our vets have not been given a fair go by our governments, again, like I say, both state and federal, and they're fed up. They're absolutely fed up of seeing this be the case.
Thanks for that. And Sam, your thoughts on this, and incidentally, to show the non-partisan nature of the evening, the act to which I referred was actually passed by the Howard government, which committed us to a couple of long, costly wars in the Middle East area of operations. So it's not a partisan issue. I think the current Merca, as it's called, is ghastly in its operation. Have you been involved in this space at all, or does St Vincent de Paul see veterans through its support to people sleeping rough and so on? I know they're overrepresented in that cohort.
Look, you're absolutely right. We don't have any particular programs for veterans, but you don't have to go on too many night patrols around the city before you run into a couple of vets who are homeless, who are doing it rough. But look, I was just reflecting today. I have this same sort of thought most Anzac Days. Both my grandfathers served in World War II, and one of them was in the Signals Directorate in the Pacific, who was discharged at the end of the war and had, for all intents and purposes, what would obviously now be described as post-traumatic stress syndrome. He lived a pretty rough, few decades after the war, and the stories that my mum and her brothers have of growing up with him were pretty sad. I mean, he's one of the most important figures in my life. He'd conquered a lot of those demons by the time I met him. But, you hear those stories that mum had to put up with, and her mum and her brothers and sister had to put up with, and it was horrible. And, that was 70-something years ago that he was discharged from World War II and came home. And you can sort of forgive medical services, you can forgive the veterans departments back then for not knowing what to make of this strange, syndrome. You can't forgive them so much 70-something years later. These things are known. These conditions are understood. I don't want to prejudge this Royal Commission. I want to give it absolutely every benefit of every doubt. My great worry, though, is that, like so many other Royal Commissions, and again, let's not be bipartisan. Let's not be partisan about this. Both parties do it. But like so many other Royal Commissions, my great worry is that the recommendations will get to the heart of the matter, but they will then be too expensive for any individual government to implement right now. And they will, as you said in your editorial, sit on the shelf gathering dust. That's my great worry. But look, I really don't want to prejudge it.
Same. I choose to be an optimist on it as well. I just hope they get it underway and appoint appropriate commissioners very rapidly. Karina, your thoughts on this one?
Thank you, Catherine, for the important issues that you've raised. Certainly we do need to see greater support for our veterans, for those servicemen and women who have fought and those have died also for our country. In terms of benefit claims, we've seen since 2017 more than a doubling of claims being made by our veterans. There's now a backlog of 25,000 claims and the average processing time is 6 months. This isn't good enough, particularly given the service that people have given for this country that are putting forward these claims to our government. But also, while there's been a $500 million injection of funding to make claims more accessible to our returned servicemen and women, more funding, I believe, is needed in this space. A 6-month waiting period for those, particularly who are suffering from conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder, as Sam pointed out, who might be experiencing homelessness or in need of material aid because they aren't receiving sufficient support after returning home from serving our country, putting their lives on the line. That isn't good enough. So hopefully we will see more funding put into this space, not only because our veterans need to know that their country has their back, but also to encourage more people to put themselves forward to serve our country, to know that when they return, that they'll be properly supported.
No, there's a lot of merit in that, and as a lawyer I'd love to talk to you offline sometime, because I think the Commonwealth's law panel often doesn't display model litigant behaviour when it's got its full legal might arrayed against an individual veteran who's trying to mount these claims and negotiate this Byzantine bureaucracy. It's been, some of the cases I've seen have been quite hair-raising, and there's a desperate shortage of psychiatric professionals whose wait times are reasonable even once the veteran's claim's approved. But panel, thank you for your insights on that. That's been a great way to, and an appropriate way to open our proceedings on Anzac Day.